Hello and welcome to Aviation 101 with Laura. We are continuing the series about the simulated oral for the aircraft dispatcher practical exam. This time I am looking at task D, which has called weather-related hazards. I have that pulled up on the PTS, which I will link to in the video description so you can follow along. This one I'm going to give you like questions and then my suggested answer so you can practice. And there's the other version I'm going to release. Could be that one you're watching where I'm just giving questions. You get to fill in the blank your own answers. However, this one's going to be a little bit better for you to actually like use my scenario because of how this task is structured. Other thing I want to say, I did turn on my channel membership opportunity if you want to support the channel and the work I'm doing and like basically kick it up a notch. You get some cool bonus features, especially our members only every fourth Monday live stream. And there's the details in that. I will put a link in the description for how you can join as a supporting member. Okay, so this task is weather-related hazards. And let's just look at what the practical test standard says. It says that the examiner needs to see if the applicant has adequate knowledge of weather hazards, the elements of weather hazards, by applying all performance penalties and corrections on the manual flight plan dispatch release and appropriately briefing or discussing with the examiner weather hazards such as. Then we have a big list. So for this part of this task, I'm actually going to look at the idea that they're saying applies, basically looking at this relating to a manual flight plan dispatch release. Okay, but I'll release another one where I'm going to just ask general questions about these hazards, and it won't necessarily have to do with any specific flight plan. So this is the first time I've really shown you guys what a flight plan at my dispatch school class looks like. This is what it looks like. This is just the fourth exercise that the class does. And there are some various things that we have to pay attention to with related to weather. So I'm going to be kind of switching back and forth with the practical test standards here, but you can see that it says like you need to apply performance penalties, corrections on the manual flight plan. So that can mean like not routing the aircraft through areas of thunderstorms. That would mean that you need to be able to identify, how am I going to know where there are thunderstorms? Well, clearly we're going to get to that. But it can also be knowing your aircraft's limit, like crosswinds and gusts. Like for example, if you have, actually it doesn't say crosswind, but tailwind limitation on your aircraft, you should not be planning the aircraft to arrive on a runway that exceeds the tailwind component. Or planning to arrive with lower than your required visibility, or planning a takeoff when you don't have the required visibility to have that flight be dispatched. So, all right, without further ado, we're going to kind of look at this flight plan. I'm going to be like the examiner, and I'm going to ask some questions having to do with this flight plan and like that list of weather hazards. Okay, so this flight plan is going from Seattle to San Francisco. There's a little map. Okay, great. The basic information is on the front here. Any MELs are listed out, and we may be talking about those, or you can check out my video about MELs, CDLs, okay? But then here is all the information, and I'll zoom in, on our weather. So since this is related to weather-related hazards, we will get started with this. So, okay. And just so we're clear, the flight is supposedly going from Seattle to San Francisco, but there's a lot of weather information given from multiple airports, because when I'm making this flight plan for my students, I want them to figure out what should be my alternate. Do I need an alternate? And then pick from the suggested options of alternates. Okay, so I'll pretend to be the examiner. Okay, so with this flight plan you have today, are there any kind of concerning weather issues that you want to bring to my attention if you're giving me like a weather briefing for this flight, or anything that was impacting your ability to dispatch the flight, or what you were looking at for weather hazards? So what can cause this kind of low visibility that you're seeing here in Seattle? Okay, what about the weather in San Francisco? What other weather hazards do you have in this flight plan you were looking at? Okay, what about en route weather? Okay, so why is turbulence a hazard for us in our big Boeing 737? Okay, you also mentioned this thing about the convective sigmets. Why are thunderstorms a hazard to us in a Boeing 737? Okay, let's look back at our PTS and see what else is going on. Okay, so you mentioned that we have poor visibility. How would we know if we had a contaminated runway? What is that about? Okay, so talk me through how you planned this flight specifically. Is there anything that you did relating to the surface visibility restriction? You also said there's low visibility in San Francisco. So did you have to do anything for that for enhancing safety? Okay, so where did that show up in your flight planning, and how would the captain know this? Okay, how would you know if there was a volcanic eruption that might impact the flight? Okay, good. So we're going to stop there. And next time, we're going to take it up with more questions, because obviously I cannot make a flight plan for everybody that has a hurricane and a typhoon and a tornado and a thunderstorm and a microburst and all these things going on, and turbulence and wind shear and all this stuff. But we will get back to more questions with that with part 2 when we continue with task D about weather-related hazards. Thanks for watching Aviation 101 with Laura. Have a great day.